It's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? That little shaker of pepper on your kitchen table. What if I told you that simple spice launched fleets, toppled empires, and literally redrew the map of the world? Well, that's exactly what happened. Let's dive into this incredible story of how Europe's obsession with spice kicked off a global revolution.
So, yeah, how did this happen? For hundreds of years, Europeans loved the spices from the East. I mean, who doesn't? But actually getting them, that was a whole other story. It was tough, it was dangerous, and it was ridiculously expensive. And that one problem, that burning desire to find a better way, is what ended up changing, well, everything.
And look, this connection wasn't exactly new. We're talking since the Roman Empire, stuff like spices, silks, all that good stuff was making its way from India over to Europe. But think of it like a massive game of telephone. It was this long, broken-up journey. The goods passed through so many different hands before they ever got to where they were going.
All right, so what gives? What changed? Why all of a sudden in the 15th century does this go from a nice to have to an absolute all-consuming obsession? Well, the answer isn't in India. It's in Europe.
This slide really breaks it down. You've got a few things happening all at once, kind of like a perfect storm. Europe's coming out of the Middle Ages, right? And farming is getting way better. More food means they can support more livestock, which means, you guessed it, a lot more meat on the table. But here's the catch. No refrigerators. So how do you keep that meat from going bad? Spices, especially pepper. It was crucial for preserving food and, let's be honest, making it taste a whole lot better. On top of that, people were getting wealthier. They didn't just want the basics anymore, they wanted luxury. We're talking fine Indian cottons, Chinese silks, and of course, spices became the ultimate status symbol.
Okay, so you've got Europe that's desperate for spices, and the East that has them. Sounds like a simple case of supply and demand, right? Wrong. It was anything but simple. There was a huge wall, a political and economic wall, standing right in the middle.
So here's what happened. After the Roman Empire crumbled, Arab powers basically took over all the old trade routes. But the real game changer, the moment everything shifted, was in 1453. That's when the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople. This was the gateway between East and West. And just like that, the Ottomans and their allies had a stranglehold on every single path, land or sea, that connected India to Europe.
And this wasn't just a toll booth here and there. No, this was a full-blown, state-run monopoly. Every single ounce of pepper, every yard of silk was taxed to the hilt. This generated incredible wealth for the rulers in the Middle East. And for the Europeans? Well, it meant they were completely at the mercy of their biggest rivals.
And that brings us to the money, the insane economics of it all. Just look at this. By the time a little pouch of pepper made its journey from a market in India, onto a ship, then onto a camel, through a dozen different traders, and finally landed in Venice, the price had just exploded. We're talking 100 times the original cost. Every single middleman along the way took their cut, and by the end, what cost just a few rupees in India was selling for a fortune in Europe. It was unsustainable.
So what do? You're faced with this total blockade and prices that are just through the roof. The European nations came to a pretty simple conclusion. There's only one way out of this. We have to find another path, a direct route by sea.
And the timing was perfect, really. This was the Renaissance, a time of incredible curiosity, scientific breakthroughs, and a real spirit of adventure. Plus, they were building better ships, stronger ships that could actually handle long, brutal ocean voyages. So you mix that new technology with this desperate need to get around the Ottoman monopoly, and boom, the race to find a direct sea route was on.
Portugal was at the front of the pack. You had this guy, Prince Henry the Navigator, who was just obsessed with this idea. And then in 1487, they get a huge win. Bartholomew Diaz manages to sail all the way around the southern tip of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. This was massive. It proved a sea route was actually possible. A few years later, Portugal and Spain basically draw a line on the map, splitting the world between them, and Portugal gets the rights to the eastern route. The stage was perfectly set, and in 1497, Vasco da Gama's expedition finally left the harbor.
Can you even imagine? After almost a full year at sea, battling storms, sickness, the terrifying unknown, the Portuguese sailors finally spotted land. They'd done it. They had reached India.
So, it's May, 1498. Vasco da Gama's ships, with the help of a Gujarati pilot they picked up, a man named Abdul Majid, finally drop anchor off the coast of Calicut.
This one moment, this arrival, it was about to change the course of history, not just for India, but for the entire world.
The local ruler, a Hindu king known as the Zamarin, actually gave them a pretty warm welcome. See, his city, Calicut, was this booming, open port. Its whole prosperity was built on free trade with everyone. Arabs, Chinese, you name it. But the Portuguese, they had a very different plan. They weren't there to play nice and join the party. They were there to take over. They went straight to the Zamarin and demanded that he kick out all their rivals, the Arab traders. The Zamarin must have been stunned. His entire kingdom thrived on open trade. So, of course, he refused. And right there, you have the first major clash between two totally opposite ways of looking at the world and at business.
So, Da Gama didn't get his monopoly on that first trip. He sailed back to Portugal empty-handed on that front. But what he did bring back with him was about to trigger an earthquake in global power.
I mean, just look at this number. When Vasco da Gama sold the spices he'd brought back, the profit was mind-blowing. We're talking at least 10 times what the entire, dangerous, year-long voyage had cost to fund. 10 times.
A tenfold return on investment? That number sent shockwaves through every court and trading house in Europe. The cat was out of the bag. The sea route wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was real, and it was a direct path to unbelievable riches. Suddenly, every country with a coastline wanted a piece of the action.
And so, the great race to India began. The Portuguese got there first, sure, but everyone else was right on their heels. The English formed their East India Company in 1600. The Dutch showed up just 2 years after that. Then came the Danes, then the French. It was a flood. And the Indian Ocean, which for centuries had been this pretty peaceful zone of multicultural trade, was about to become a war zone for competing European powers.
And this is where the whole approach just fundamentally changes. The Portuguese figured something out pretty quickly. Their ships, armed with powerful cannons, gave them a massive military advantage. So they stopped acting like simple traders. They became armed monopolists. They started building fortresses, attacking Arab ships, and using brute force to control the trade routes. They basically introduced a whole new, brutal rule to the game. Might is right.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big question, doesn't it? That first trip, which was all about buying pepper, kicked off a chain reaction. It went from trading posts to fortresses, from commerce to straight-up conquest. It really makes you think. At what point does a search for a better price turn into an invasion?